What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. here. We got a great show for you guys today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe to us, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, as well as the best of GoJo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern on VSiN Radio each and every day. Fun one coming up today here. We got our buddy Charlotte Wilder going to join us for a Wilder Wednesday on a Tuesday, so don't adjust your dials. That's on us. That's not on you, but she's going to stop by in the second hour of the show, hang out and talk some NBA with us. We've got the winds of change blowing around the number one overall pick in the draft. We've got some combine quarterbacks looking to make a leap this week. But Dad, before we get to that, we mentioned we've got Charlotte obviously joining us here momentarily, but we've also got a new family member joining us around here at GoJo and Golic. We would like to welcome in our new bud, Claudia Bellafato, who joins us now. You've seen her as the betting analyst over at Nesson before on the MLB Network. Claudia, what's going on holding it down in the studio in Boston?
Hey, guys. Yeah, I'm doing my best, keeping the seat warm for Jessie as hopefully she pops out that baby soon. Excited to be here and hanging out with you guys.
I don't want to Baja Blast this baby.
Yeah. Yes, I would say we're still on baby watch, as Claudia rightly points out. Yeah. We've got no new news about Jessie, about the Baja Blast status of this baby, but we've got Claudia in here, which is going to be awesome. A lot of great sports betting insight, especially from her, in addition to everything else that we're going to do around here. So fun to have someone new in the mix around here. Like we said, Charlotte will join in, and they'll make it even better when we get to the second hour here. And in the meantime, we can get to a lot of news that we saw yesterday, guys. Feels like we're watching 2023 on repeat all over again. I had to go and check the date because when I opened up the timeline yesterday and started to see the headlines from ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter about running backs once again in a precarious financial situation in the NFL, I thought I was taking crazy pills. All yesterday, we get the announcements, almost copy-paste, one after the other, that Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, and Josh Jacobs would all be set to become free agents, that their teams would opt to not franchise tag them this upcoming season, and would, in some cases, look to potentially explore a long-term deal if it made sense with the teams. But, Dad, a year later now, after what we saw unfolding this season, was any part of this result surprising to you with these backs in particular?
Well, I mean, the one thing you could do, obviously, because it's such a low amount, if you don't want to tag someone who's going to be a higher amount, we keep talking about like the Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed. For the Chiefs situation, it's always going to be a low number. I think it's like, 12 or 14 million for a running back to tag. But I unfortunately don't think that position has gotten, is going to get rich all of a sudden. We just talked yesterday about how the salary cap went up to a record high, $254 million. And will the backs get any of that? And the backs are going to change. You mentioned guys that aren't getting tagged. Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard. Tennessee's not going to tag Derrick Henry. Same Austin Eckler is going to be a free agent, as well as DeAndre Swift, A.J. Dillon, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, J.K. Dobbins, and others. So you're going to see the running back musical chairs this year. Unfortunately for them, still kind of on the cheap. You look at the last deal that was over $10 million a year, that was Jonathan Taylor, who did it last year. Before that, Mike, you go back to 2020 when Christian McCaffrey signed the $64 million deal, when Alvin Kamara signed the $75 million deal. Those are your two highest, 16 and 15, CMC and Kamara, as far as average annual salary. And then it goes down into the 13s to 12s. I don't see big contracts going out. I mean, we talked, as I said, we talked about it yesterday with the cap. Will guys get bigger numbers because of that? And I just think teams are going to learn how to spread it out more than all of a sudden say, yeah, you know what, you running backs have been underpaid, so we're going to start to pay you now. Unfortunately for that position, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think there's going to be an uphill battle because it's supply and demand issue. So what we've always talked about is running back is a position that has been inundated with a lot of quality guys you've been able to find at varying levels of the draft. And we've got the draft coming up here now. And while I don't know if it's the deepest class ever, there's still some compelling names in here. Jonathan Brooks out of Texas, Trey Benson from Florida State, our boy Audric Estime out of Notre Dame, all of whom are going to be able to come in and I think immediately impact teams in some way. And for a lot of these other guys, Dad, they're running into the problem where people are looking at running back and the specific age and kind of this cliff that we see in guys late 20s. That's why if we're looking out at this group, guys like Josh Jacobs, guys like Tony Pollard, who are only 26, might have some chance. I think Josh Jacobs, if there's one guy I was going to bet was going to find his way to a multi-year payday coming off of this offseason, it would probably be Josh Jacobs, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was right there in Las Vegas, considering the foundation they're trying to build for a new quarterback that they're breaking in. But, Dad, everyone else now, I said this after last offseason, and I think it's going to be true this year, is I'm fascinated to see now what the running backs themselves prioritize. Meaning, all right, these guys, because of what we saw in the league as a trend this year, where running the football had been pretty back as far as a mainstay of a lot of offenses that were successful into the postseason, are these guys going to prioritize trying to get still as much money as they can out of the situation, which is absolutely their right? Or are we going to see guys all of a sudden start to pick and choose a little bit and say, all right, if I can get myself onto a contender, if I can be a guy that's in a tandem that doesn't have to shoulder the load of all the carries, since I'm not going to be paid like a bell cow, and then are we going to see these guys actually wind up on some teams and kind of have that Christian McCaffrey-like effect where, hey, if you plug one of these high-end running backs into a team like the Buffalo Bills all of a sudden, who knows what else that offense becomes capable of, especially from what we saw at the back half of last season.
I agree, and there's a few running backs that fit that mold. And I agree about Josh Jacobs. I think he's going to end up back with the Raiders. But guys like Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, these are three guys who I would think, and again, it all depends on the money. Obviously, everybody's looking for as much money as they can get, but three guys right off the top of my head that I could say you want to put on that contending team because what they can do. Derrick Henry gives you such a great running attack, a two-headed monster, Austin Eckler out of the backfield and what he can do. Saquon Barkley doing them both, running and catching the ball out of the backfield. But, I think you'll get kind of the temperature of the running back position when these guys are free agents, because I mentioned a bunch of names. There's a lot of them, so there's going to be a domino effect, right? Some are going to be obviously more expensive than others, but none, I think, are going to have this incredible draw on your salary cap. So I do think, those ones I mentioned early on will look to go to contenders. If you're not going to get the big bag, which I don't think they're going to get, why not go to a team? None of these guys have won a title. So, and those would be the ones I would look at to add to my arsenal of a contending team.
And a reminder, the running back market been pretty stagnant. Like we mentioned, Jonathan Taylor was able to cash in for multiple years this last season with that 3-year, $42 million extension, which is probably going to be in line with if Josh Jacobs does get a payday, you make it a little bit above whatever the franchise tag was going to be over multiple years. You guarantee the first couple of them and maybe a little bit of extra change while these guys are in the primes of their career. And then unfortunately, after that, it becomes a little bit of a crapshoot where a guy like Derrick Henry, even being considered in this way at 30 years old and going into this portion of his career with as many miles on his body as Derrick Henry has, is a gross outlier. That guy's a physical freak. I watched his off-season workout videos. I'm scared as hell. By the way, that was the first person I thought of during the Cam Newton fight video yesterday when all these morons were out here thinking, oh yeah, scrapping with Cam Newton. good life choice that I want to make is that we are not that far standard deviation point wise from somebody in public feeling like it's good to fight Derrick Henry, because they're basically the same. Hell, Cam is even bigger than Derrick Henry. And yet I would imagine nobody would have just sheer moron built into their DNA enough to try and fight King Henry in public. But at this point, apparently, Dad, everything's on the table.
Yeah, that would be. I saw his workout video too. I mean, come on. I mean, tackling this guy. I mean, I had big backs. Probably the biggest back I had to tackle back when I was playing was Christian Okoye from the Chiefs, who was a monster as well. But as I've always said, being on the D line, you don't catch as much of the brunt from the big backs because they're not building up as much speed yet by the time I would get a tackle. It's when these guys turn the corner, or get to that second or third level that, the DBs start making business decisions on which way they want to go. You want to dive at the ankles, or you want to get yourself stiff-armed into the turf. So it will be interesting there. We'll see what happens. You mentioned, too, the draft with some of the running backs that are out there. You had 2 in the first round this time around. I don't think that's going to happen here. We talked about Jonathan Brooks, I believe the top rated, and he's coming off an injury as well. So you're going to be able to get better value. And a lot of people look at Isaiah Pacheco, a 7th rounder, and what he's done in Kansas City certainly helps having Mahomes and the other talent around you. But still, he came in and he took over that job, and he isn't going to give it up for God knows how long. So you certainly can find value at that position as well. So there's a glut of running backs, and we'll see how many spaces there are for all the running backs out there.
Yeah, it's unfortunately the worst, saddest game of musical chairs out there. I feel for these dudes because we see how important they are for teams. They were guys I loved blocking for. Running backs are some of the hardest working people in any organization because of what they're asked to do on a down-in, down-out basis. But unfortunately, we live in an NFL where all of the money, time, and attention is absorbed toward the quarterback position. And Claudia, that's where we got to look next, because Peter King, God love him, announces his retirement yesterday and gives all of us a parting gift on the way out.
Yeah, last column, he wanted to get real poetic with it, guys. So he said that was the way the wind was blowing in terms of the Bears trading away the number 1 pick and keeping their quarterback. Now, the odds makers, Vegas doesn't know everything, but they have set the lines for this market. So they say the Falcons are the favorite to get Fields. The Bears are close at plus 150, but we have to talk about this column. His last one, he just drops the mic and says, this is what I think, it's speculation, but that's just the way the wind is blowing. So where do you guys think the wind is blowing? Is he on with this one? Is Peter King right with this?
So I saw Dan Patrick talking about this yesterday, and I believe Dan is right. Peter King is not some hot take artist. This is not a guy who's just going to, I think, say this without having some backing and have talked to a bunch of people. We know Peter's been one of the most well-connected journalists in the sport for a long, long time now. And so when he starts supposing out loud about this, I would imagine this is not, and this is no discredit to him, an original idea. This is something that he's heard from enough people to feel like throwing into his final Monday morning in football piece. Dad, I would look at this and say, and caution everybody to be careful about anything you hear related to Justin Fields and the number 1 overall pick right now. We are in smokescreen season, and this pick in particular, given the situation the Bears are in right now, as unique as it is, having a quarterback in Justin Fields who peaked at just the right time for you to increase and maximize his value at the end of the season, and having the kind of draft capital the Bears do right now, I'm sure they would like to make everyone believe everything is on the table for this team to see if somebody gets an itchy trigger finger with this quarterback class in particular. And heading into Combine weekend, we know what's about to happen. We're going to have a couple of these guys start to supernova. I'd imagine we're going to have a guy outside of that top 3 that we've talked about of quarterbacks all of a sudden start to get a little bit more buzz. And so all of this is really working in favor of the Bears to create mystery around this pick. And I kind of think that's what's going on here right now.
Oh, I completely agree. But you do have to love Peter King, the way he goes out. I suppose the Bears are going to trade the top pick. I know nothing, but that seems to be the way the wind is blowing, just what Claudia had said. I mean, it's just hilarious to go out that way, because you said it. He's not a hot take artist. So you wonder why he's going out on this one. That seems somewhat interesting. And Well, I tell you what, though, the amount you could get for trading that pick is certainly way more than the amount you're going to get for trading Fields himself. So that team needs a lot. They started to build around it, bringing in Montez Sweat and signing him in the trade after they got traded. They got him in from Washington. So you need a lot of pieces, but if you don't have the quarterback, and that's the bottom line, if they don't feel Justin Fields is the quarterback, then they have to move on. That's the only thing. I know you can pick up a lot of pieces with that number one pick, but if you do not have a quarterback, forget everything else. Especially if you have, the quarterback in Fields is getting closer to the end of his rookie deal, but if you get a new quarterback, you start that clock over. You have the ability to still build around that quarterback until you have to maybe pay that quarterback if he pans out, which is what you're hoping for. I still don't see Chicago hanging on to Fields. I see them moving on, Mike. I really do. I see them starting that clock over again.
So here's the scenario that Peter lays out. He said, suppose that GM Ryan Poles trades the top pick down one spot to Washington so Washington can come up and take Caleb Williams, who everyone's been linking them to. And then they get a second pick, the second pick in the draft, and a second round pick and a 2025 first round pick in return. Then he trades the second pick to Atlanta at 8, moves back there. He gets the 8th pick, Atlanta's second round pick, and then a first and second round pick next year. And so all told, Dad, if you looked at that, Chicago would be walking away with 3 firsts and 3 seconds over the next 2 years, in addition to their own first round picks, where they're picking at 9 this year and then again in the first round next year. That kind of capital, the only thing that you could talk me into on this timeline as a reason why the Bears could consider this would be because of the timeline you've now put yourself on with your head coach. Matt Eberflus is walking into this year on some treacherous ground, coming off a season where there was improvement at the end, but there was very real conversation about potentially parting ways with him. And we've talked about how dangerous and detrimental it can be to a young quarterback prospect to bring him in for a coach, to have things only go so well, and the organization decide, hey, we're going to move on from this head coach because we want to maximize our asset in this first round pick, and you begin the same cycle that just ate Justin Fields alive in part. And so if you were to keep Fields one more year, you'd have Fields and Eberflus basically both on a 1-year prove-it deal. You would have infinite capital going into next year's draft, and you would then have a decision to make coming off this season. Either Justin Fields and Eberflus both show you, hey, we're worth it, or you get to clean house completely, start anew, and do so armed with enough capital to get whatever you want out of the next draft. The big risk is we have no idea if any of the quarterback prospects next year are going to be mentioned in the same breath as the guys this year. And so it's, are you comfortable potentially missing out on a franchise caliber guy, betting that we get what we usually do, where a couple of prospects matriculate their way up, play better in their last year of eligibility, and now give you something to work with?
And history says that teams aren't going to pass it by. Nobody wants, no GM, in this case Ryan Poles, wants to be that guy that says, yeah, we could have had any one of the quarterbacks this year, and we could have had that pick, and if one turns into a star, and we could have had him because we were kind of playing the game. Because that's what we're talking about, right? They really don't have all the confidence in the world in Justin Fields, but they have the ability to grab a bunch of picks. So you kind of play the high wire act of saying, yeah, let's play another year with Fields. His completion percentage has gotten a little bit better each year. He threw under 10 interceptions for the first time in his career. He did that. He does fumble the ball a lot, definitely, but over 2,000 yards rushing. Listen, I like Justin Fields. I know you like Justin Fields. I'm excited to see what he probably does somewhere else. I just do not think that GMs, and I'm not just saying now, I think this is back in the day as well, would pass up this opportunity because it could come back to bite them. That says, you could have had any one of these guys, and if any one of them turns into a star, you're going to have the finger pointed at you saying, why didn't you take him?
I agree. And I think part of that is also self-preservation. Like you mentioned the name in this that even in the plan that I laid out hypothetically would be the issue is Ryan Poles, because there's no guarantee if you're the GM who'd be the one planning all this out that you survive to get to hire the next portion of this regime, because Ryan Poles is tied in with the success of these guys as well. And so would the Bears decide, hey, we really want to clean house and start new with everybody, new GM, new coach, and new quarterback, all coming in at the same time, there's no guarantee that you survive. And we know self-preservation is a hell of a motivator around this league and everywhere else. And so I'd be stunned too if Ryan Poles or anyone would sign up with that. I think it's enticing that amount of capital to walk into a draft with that when, like you said, you've got other needs elsewhere. But I think for the Bears, you mentioned Montez Sweat comes over, defensive front started to look a lot better. Offensive line, you've invested some high draft picks in that group that looked like they were starting to pay off last year. DJ Moore's been a good weapon. You're going to get to add other guys, Cole Kmet at tight end. You're going to have other guys that pop up to help out. Your foundation's a little more set than most people would think.
And then, you know what the story always is, who has the guts to move up into that top 3 slot to get a quarterback? Because the last time we saw that, didn't work out so well from the player standpoint when San Francisco went up to get Trey Lance, who's no longer on that team.
Yeah, the top 3 was the big story of last year. There's no doubt about it. We've got a pretty firm top 3 this year. But coming up next, one team in the NFL would like you to consider maybe a top 4 as pretty enticing in the upcoming NFL draft. We'll get to that next on GoJo and Golic.
GoJo and Golic, Arizona Cardinals fans, feeling a little deja vu. Yesterday, the team posted a picture of Kyler Murray with the caption, "Our franchise quarterback." Now, why is that deja vu? Well, Josh Rosen, back in 2019, he enters the chat like, hold on, wait a minute, you guys said this about me. Then head coach Kingsbury said, yeah, that's our guy. That was in February. And then in April, what did they do, guys? Went and drafted #1 overall pick in Kyler Murray. So everybody sort of knew this was a lie. And now I'm looking at this post like, is this a lie too? And not that odds makers know, but just so you know, Murray was the -600 favorite to go to Arizona. So Vegas saw that tweet and they were like, we don't believe it. And now I'm looking at this tweet and I don't know if I believe it. Do you guys?
No, I think the lie detector test has determined that this is a lie in terms of it repeating history. Like, it seemed weird, the timing, because there was no extension signed here. It wasn't like they did anything or changed his contract. He wasn't someone they were bringing from the outside looking in. So everyone's wondering, what the hell is the timing on this? And to your point, Claudia, this is a bad relationship history for the Arizona Cardinals, right? The past, in a lot of people's minds, might have been predictive. It's hard to run from getting memed into oblivion the way that they did. But Dad, ultimately, I think this is just the opposite. This is actually, if we're gonna go love languages here, I think this would be words of affirmation in a way that I'm actually believing from the Arizona Cardinals, and more of a signal that, hey, we'd like someone to come up and get this number 4 overall pick in the draft, because we think that you should think one of these other quarterbacks is valuable enough to come up here and give us some fun assets so we can keep building around Kyler Murray. That's my read. What's yours, Dad?
Well, listen, my read is every team should do exactly what they need to do to try and fool another team into doing something they don't want to do. I mean, that's what this game is. So you don't believe a word anybody says. I do believe Kyler Murray is going to be the quarterback for the Cardinals next year. I do believe that. He came in and he played pretty well toward the end of the year. Remember, he only played, I think, 8 games last year coming off the injury from the year before. And we even wondered if he was going to play at all. Because remember, he had that same thing that Denver wanted Russell Wilson to get rid of. Kyler Murray has an injury clause for about $28 million that if he got hurt and didn't pass a physical next year, it would be guaranteed. So we thought, this guy's not going to see the field. They don't want to pay him that. But I think he's going to be the guy there, Mike. Whether that's right or wrong, I actually believe he is going to be their quarterback. And what a road. When this guy signed that deal, there was that actual clause the Cardinals, for those that don't remember, the Cardinals put in the clause that he had to do extra studying outside of the facility, X amount of hours of extra studying. We were all like, what the hell is this? Number one, why is it in a contract? And number two, man, you made it public. So it was a stunning move to me by the Cardinals, and it was the Cardinals who somebody put it out there, because there's no reason Kyler Murray would put that out there. But I do think he is going to be the quarterback there. Now, quarterback of the future going on after this year, I don't know. But I think at least this year he's going to be.
Yeah, he's still in the midst of that massive extension, 5 years, $230 million that he signed back in the spring of 2022. And Dad, you're right, it was a little bit of trepidation there for a while, and that was the old regime, right? That was Steve Keim still at GM, that was Cliff Kingsbury still at head coach when all of that went on with the homework clause, and you had Jonathan Cannon come in and pew his way into America's hearts, and then actually seemed to get the best out of Kyler Murray in the back half of the season. Like, the most important thing for me, Dad, wasn't what we saw on the field, which was actually very akin to the old Kyler Murray. For a guy coming off a knee injury to still move the way he did, which has always been such a big part of Kyler's game, who's been a multi-time Pro Bowler in addition to all of this, and a guy that played well enough to get one of those contracts. He was extremely mobile, but the most important thing to me was we didn't hear a peep about any of the other stuff. The questions about Kyler Murray leadership, the questions about maturity surrounding stuff like the homework clause that led to that, because where there's smoke, there's fire, I'm sure, to some extent. And so it does seem like there was some maturing that went on there. Dad, as you were talking, though, the tinfoil hat on me really went on here. Walk with me on this, because I felt a little crazy.
All right.
Everyone knew when that post went up exactly the Josh Rosen post from the last time around here. We all remembered that and all immediately went, wait a minute, does this mean something? What if it did mean something? What if it's actually like a deep state signal to other people that we are open for business when it comes to Kyler Murray, and that you should be worried about his future because the tweet last time signaled we were worried about that quarterback's future here. And so this is not a green light for people to come for the number 4 overall pick. It's actually a green light for people to call them inquiring about Kyler Murray and see if they might like him for their future quarterback. What do you think about that?
Well, that would be interesting, but then the question always asked is, okay, is if our quarterback's available, we're listening to the phone ring, we'll answer it. What are they doing for a quarterback then? I mean, they're sitting in the 4 slot out of the top 3, which is supposedly going quarterback. So as we always say, it's the most important position on the field. What is their game plan for the quarterback position?
Maybe draft J.J. McCarthy at 4. I don't know, Dad. I'm just starting to begin. This is just the wins. You know what? When in doubt, if I feel like saying something that could be potentially controversial, I'm just going to Peter King it and just say, you know what? The winds are blowing right now, and they're telling me that the Cardinals could potentially be shopping Kyler Murray. That's, I think, going to be the mode of transportation from now on for the takes. We're going to go with the wind.
Well, listen. Everybody knows out there, don't believe a word. You're going to hear so many headlines up until the draft that you don't believe. And I believe, for me, the winds blowing for me say Kyler Murray is going to be the quarterback there, and they are going to get him a franchise receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. after the quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, which it seems at this point that if he's going to be your quarterback, which I think he is, get him more help on the outside, and that would be Marvin Harrison Jr. So after all the smoke is blown everywhere, I think this one settles into what we think it's going to be.
Yeah, I am fascinated to actually watch what the Cardinals do in this draft because all jokes aside and the wind blowing aside, I actually think Kyler Murray, if we get more of what we saw last year, and now he's going to have a healthy offseason with this entire coaching staff and be able to go through everything that he couldn't last year while he was rehabbing, it looked pretty good. And Jonathan Gannon and what he was able to squeeze out of that team last year. Remember, Arizona was one of the feistiest outs in football at the beginning of the season. Had that upset win over the Dallas Cowboys that got everyone talking. This is a team that could be playing, and Dad, the NFC West, we talked about this a lot with the AFC North, which is still probably going to be the premier division in football this upcoming season, especially when you add a healthy Joe Burrow back into the mix. But you look at the NFC West all of a sudden. You've obviously got the 49ers fresh off another Super Bowl appearance. The Rams, who I am buying as much 2024 Rams stock as anybody can humanly hold after what we saw from this season. You can't give me enough of that stuff right now. I think that team's going to be that good coming up into this season. And you've got Mike McDonald taking over the helm for the Seattle Seahawks with Ryan Grubb at coordinator now and Geno Smith still back under center there. And the Cardinals lurking in the distance where all of a sudden, depending on how this draft goes in this offseason acquisition period, could at the very least make themselves an average team, which, man, if you throw an average team into the mix with the rest of that group, that division's going to be hell in a cell again like it used to be.
I agree. I agree. And that's why another reason I do think we're going to see what they're going to build with Kyler Murray, with adding a receiver like Marvin Harrison. Remember, they had a first-year offensive coordinator in Drew Petzing last year who came over from Cleveland and didn't really get to work with Kyler Murray, right? Kyler Murray was rehabbing in the offseason. You know, it was Josh Dobbs, it was Clayton Tune that were playing a lot that year, and obviously Kyler Murray played the 8 games. So now you get that full offseason together where Murray's healthy and can work with the OC, and they can work together now. I'll be interested to see what the numbers are for Kyler Murray going forward as he's not dealing with an injury, as he's just preparing with this OC on what they're going to do this year. But I agree. You know, we said last year they were a tough out. They should be better this year.
Yeah, I agree. And Drew Petzing did a hell of a job, got Kyler Murray under center, did a lot of different things we hadn't seen from him previously in a Cardinals uniform that really started to make it seem like, all right, there could be a really high ceiling for this yet again, like we thought. You mentioned one interesting potential draft pick for them in Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio State. Coming up next, we'll get to the headlines that he made yesterday about his decision regarding the NFL Combine. Next on GoJo Golic.
Golic, Indy is bumping once again for the 2024 NFL Combine. And as excited as we all are, some of the top prospects aren't so much. They are going, but they're not participating. And 3 guys in the top 5, including the overwhelming number 1 overall pick in Caleb Williams out of USC, is saying, no, I'm not going to showcase my talents. Same with LSU's quarterback Jaden Daniels and Marvin Harrison Jr., the best receiver of the group that we just discussed. Guys, is this shocking? Like, we've seen it before in the past. And then also my question to you is, what is the thought process that goes through these players' mind when they choose not to do it? And do you think it hurts their draft stock?
So, yeah, Claudia, I think the thought process that goes through a player's mind at this level when they decide that they're not going to participate in this process is, I'm so good at my game, I don't have to play yours. It's my favorite thing that shows up at this time of year because all of these guys know no matter what they do in this process, there's nothing left to be gained. They've all done enough. We talk about them as the top overall pick. Marvin Harrison Jr., the unquestioned number 1 wide receiver for so many people for a long time that, Dad, it just seems like the only thing they can do in this process is hurt themselves at one point or another, either physically with what we've seen in the past, guys getting injured at their pro days or at the combine or what have you, or with their draft status based on how an interview goes or something with the medical evals and stuff. For a lot of these guys, there's nothing more they can do in this process. And so they're looking at it and go, yeah, why am I going to participate then?
Yeah, and you look at it, and it's a small percentage, right? I mean, you're talking about 250 some draft picks, and it's just a few that are going to sit out because, you know why they're doing it? Because they can. There are those players that can control the narrative. And if you're going into an interview, wouldn't you like your interview to be in a position where you can put your best foot forward? And for these guys that don't have to perform at the combine, their best interview is going to be their pro day. When all of a sudden these quarterbacks are thrown to their receivers, guys they know, routes they worked on, a script they have where a ball will rarely hit the ground on those things because they can control that narrative. So I have zero issue for anybody that says it's going to hurt their stock. I don't believe it at all. Bryce Young didn't perform last year at the combine. How'd that hurt his stock? How'd that go for him, going number 1 in the draft? So there are players that can do it without question. Say, I'm just going to go talk to teams and that's it. That's between you, your agent, your family, the league, and understanding what you may be missing out on and what you may be protecting when you do it. But Mike, you're right. It's they're playing their game, right? They're not playing the NFL's game. They're playing their game to put themselves in their best position.
It's interesting with the quarterbacks, what we're talking about here, like you said, is not unprecedented. We saw this with Bryce Young last year where he only really went out and got measured at his pro day since the height was something that so many people were enamored with. Marvin Harrison Jr. becomes the interesting one because it sounds like he's not going to do anything in this process. He's basically staying at Ohio State, and they said he's getting ready to play football. Dad, you brought this up the other day. When you're training for all this stuff around pro day and combine, it's not even just the drills. You're spending time working on interview strategy, what you're supposed to say in these closed-door meetings with teams when they ask you about certain things and all the weird prying questions we've heard. You're spending time on that stuff. All of your bandwidth is spent on stuff that's not going to make you a better football player. And so Marvin Harrison Jr. is saying, bump that. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to train for football because that's what y'all are about to pay me to do. And I'm not going to do any of the rest of this. It sounds like, Dad, he's not going to go to Indianapolis and take part in the medical evaluations, which some people that saw his knee almost, or his ankle almost get sawed off in the Notre Dame game this last year might want to look at. He's not going to take part in the interview or I think he might take part in the interview process. But all the rest of the physical elements of it between his combine and it sounds like pro day, Dad, he might punt on altogether, which brings me back to Jamar Chase and what we saw during the pandemic where we couldn't get in contact with a lot of these guys. I think that offseason is going to end up being instructive for some people going forward when they look at how you had to evaluate talent back then, pulling a lot more of it from the tape, using a lot more of the technological resources that you have. And in the case of Marvin Harrison Jr., just opening up your eyes and remembering he's better is better than almost everybody else is better. That makes this interesting. But Dad, I don't know. This can't really be a precedent that gets set because I can't imagine there's a lot of other Marvin Harrison Jr.'s in the pipeline.
No. This is a year-to-year thing on who has already really proven themselves and is basically going to be locked in. Marvin Harrison is going to go to Indy. He's going to talk to teams, and that's what these guys do. They'll go be seen around the teams and talk to the teams and do some of the interviews. but there's no reason for him to perform for them. He has performed on the field at the highest level. Watch that, and then if you choose not to take him, that's on you. If you feel slighted because he's not playing your game and running your 40s and doing your vertical jump, and you say, well, if we can't get a look at him, we're not going to take him, that's on you. Good luck to you. This guy is going to go right where we all think he's going to go in the draft. But as I'll continue to say, it's a small percentage of players that do this. And a lot of times, it's going to be the quarterbacks who don't want to throw because you're throwing to wide receivers you've never worked with. And even though they say don't worry about the completion, it's where the throw is. How did you throw? What did you see? How did you throw the ball? Quarterbacks, and I wouldn't either, aren't going to think that way. They think they got to throw a completion. And if this guy doesn't break on the end as fast as a guy that he's used to, all of a sudden, he leads him too much and the pass doesn't look good, is that going to hurt him? So the top quarterbacks I can see, all the other quarterbacks that are going to go not in the first round, they need to throw. They need to go in there and kind of compete with everybody else and throw themselves into the fray. But this is never going to end. This is never going to end with some of these players saying, we don't want to participate in your game.
Is it not sort of a turnoff, and I don't know if that's the right word, but to the teams at the top with this draft, like especially Caleb Williams, everybody's talking about the fact, is he a good leader? He seems to have a little bit of an emotional issue. He wants a lot of control coming out of college immediately into the NFL. And now he's like, well, no, I don't need to show you what I did. I just did it. Marvin Harrison Jr. is like, I don't need an agent. All of these things, is that not, for lack of a better term, sort of a turnoff to these NFL teams?
It's the biggest thing out there, Claudia, that the NFL will let you say, oh, you're just hurting yourself by not doing our thing. And you know what I say to that? What I've done for years on the radio? To that, all right?
Well
you ain't
said.
hurting yourself at all, okay? You are not hurting. Now, again, it depends on where you are, okay? If you're a projected third rounder, yeah, you better show up and do your thing. For Mike, who was undrafted, and me, a 10th rounder, you went and did, hey, how high you need me to jump, sir? Okay, I'll jump that high. But for these people at the top, they don't have to play the game. They don't have to play it. And you're going to hear that, Claudia. You're right. You're going to hear, well, they don't want to show what they can do or this skill or that skill. No, because they don't have to. So good on them, man. You do you. That's all I got to say.
It's funny. I think we're probably going to be the first sports talk show to make this statement that is not working out at the combine an NFL ick. I feel like no one on TikTok's even gotten to that point yet where we brought up NFL icks going into the draft. But I think the difference here, if we're going to use that comparison where it's a turnoff, is, hey, the person you're talking to is a hot doctor, though. Like, they've got everything. And so you're not going to forsake everything just because they don't want to go for coffee at the place that you want to go to coffee to. They want to call the shots and go somewhere else. It's like, all right, well, you know what? Like, he's in medical school. She's in medical school. They seem like they got their stuff together. I think we can make this work. And I think that's kind of how it is with these top prospects. Because, yes, while they'd like to make you believe that there's some questions about that, ultimately it all pales in comparison to what's on the tape. And, Dad, you're right. I think it's going to be interesting. While we said this isn't necessarily going to be a precedent for a lot of guys, I look at this year like the perfect dichotomy to do would be like the tackle class. Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu out of Penn State, both seen as like the consensus top 2 tackles, both guys top 10, top 15 picks. What do they really have to gain by working out at this point? Everyone kind of knows who and what they are right now. And so what would those dudes benefit from that versus maybe the edge rusher class where you're talking about a guy like Dallas Turner or Liatu Latu where it's a little bit more contested. That market can either drag you really up high or down a little bit lower. There might be some benefit to them going out and showing off the athletic gifts at a place like the Combine. And so I do think we could see in the future, in a world in college football where we're seeing year after year, more guys opting out, more guys choosing to forego the bowl game to protect their futures here. I do wonder if we might see some other high-end top 10 prospects look at what Marvin Harrison Jr. is doing and say, yeah, I'll take some of that and do it on my own terms. All right, if we're going to talk about high-end prospects skipping the combine, we might as well lean into more combine coverage around here. Yesterday, we did a little 3-cone drill with you guys and gave you a few prospects we thought could break the bank and break our minds running at the NFL Combine. Dad, now we'll head to the vertical jump and see who's in the potential spot to make the biggest leap this upcoming week at the Combine right now. And what better place to stick than at quarterbacks where, like we had talked about with Claudia last segment, you've got guys like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels that aren't going to be participating in certain events at the Combine, going to opt for their pro day. But, Dad, the rest of this quarterback class becomes really compelling as we head into this weekend. You've got guys like J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr., and Bo Nix that are going to throw and compete at the Combine. But of the rest of the list of quarterbacks for this upcoming year, we've got guys like our own Sam Hartman from Notre Dame, Joe Milton at Tennessee, Spencer Rattler out of South Carolina. Is there anyone that you look at, Dad, and has that potential to move into either maybe a day 1 pick or a guy that's all of a sudden a value on day 2 or day 3 that could really make an impact?
Well, I think that's, we saw from a Brock Purdy. Now, we don't always expect that, being Mr. Irrelevant, going all the way back to Tom Brady being in the sixth round and some of the great quarterbacks that weren't taken in the first round. And the value to them, let's pick someone like a Sam Hartman, who won't be a first-round quarterback. But when you're going later in the draft, you have the potential to go to a better team, just like Brock Purdy did, right? Where you're a smart quarterback with a good arm that can pick up a system, and then you go in and you flourish in the league like Purdy is doing. So that's the benefit to the quarterbacks that you've mentioned. No, I don't see any of them popping up to the first round that you mentioned after the initial group. And that's okay. I think that's fine. I mean, second round, fourth round, fifth round, whatever at that point, now it's the team, because you see these top picks and who they're going to bad teams. So if you go later in that draft, you could potentially go to a better team and sit for a little bit and kind of get the system, and that can help you. So from that group, I think it's fine to go later in the draft and kind of get your bearings a little bit, because the guys that go in the beginning, you're going to be asked to do the job right away. And of that group, I mean, there's a few question marks to me. I've seen all these guys. You obviously in college, calling college games, have seen them more. Let me start with a Drake May. I see him throwing a lot of long balls. I know they needed to in Carolina, but he did do that. And it seems the short ball is more the way in the NFL. Now, he throws a nice deep middle of the field, which the middle of the field or crossing routes in the NFL is monster nowadays. But, we're just kind of slotting Drake May in there. Is that a concern for you at all, that it's a lot of deep balls and that's just not the NFL today?
No, because I think it still could be. And having a quarterback who's got great deep ball accuracy and touch the way he does, I think is always something you'd like to start with there. So Drake, I mean, the only concern for me is that he had to do so much of it under duress there. And maybe do you internalize bad habits like we've talked about with Caleb Williams too. So I going through and watching these guys, Dad, I feel really good about Caleb and Drake as 1-2 and really 1A, 1B as far as the quarterbacks you're going to evaluate there. I do think there's a little gap with Jaden Daniels at the 3rd spot there. And then after that becomes really interesting, and this is kind of the area where we talk about guys who could potentially be risers. J.J. McCarthy's been the first name out of everyone's mouth here because Jim Harbaugh's been telling everyone he's the best quarterback in this draft and the best quarterback in Michigan history because he's toolsy, because I think, quite honestly, Dad, Kurt Warner brought it up the other day online. It's difficult to evaluate a lot of quarterbacks now because you're not watching them run a lot of NFL stuff in college. People have had this reckoning with the USC offense as they've evaluated Caleb Williams. I've seen a lot of draft Twitter looking at USC and what Lincoln Riley was running there and going, what the hell are we doing with this style of offense? And so if everyone reckons with that, I do think there's something to the fact that you're going to look at a guy like J.J. McCarthy, who ran, for lack of a better terms, a grown-up offense at Michigan with a lot of the things you're asked to do before the snap, with some of the formations they use, getting him under center. It's a little bit easier to project. Even if, Dad, I just look and you go back and watch him, there's not enough reps at a lot of the things that you want to see out of a quarterback, where there is some inconsistency that shows up in certain places. But man, there are some high-level throws under duress like we talked about with Caleb and Drake, where this guy does a few things physically every game that only a handful of guys can do. So I understand what's enticing, even if for me, I wouldn't be comfortable staking my job on it in the first round.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's shown enough to say, boy, this could be something at the next level, but not in a great quantity, unlike a Michael Penix, who is throwing the ball all over the yard. I still think Penix has maybe the best, touch of anybody out there. Now there's concern over what he does when he's under pressure, and we've seen him struggle there, but I'm a huge Penix fan. I think he's going to do well at the next level. The J.J. McCarthy one, I'm with you, is kind of the biggest head scratcher because he hasn't been asked to do a ton of it, and he'll be asked to do it a lot more at the next level. So I don't know, because I'm with you. I don't know if I could stake my prediction on that and say, I'm going to take this guy, in the top 10 of the draft and make him my quarterback. I'm just not sure, but he certainly seems to be impressing people left and right. I mean, there's, Joe Milton with the strong arm, the kid from Tennessee. Spencer Rattler, we all thought was going to be this top quarterback, and he's, shifted teams and faded down a little bit. So for these guys to go and take whatever you want from the combine or from the pro day, but you're going to get, a couple of handfuls of quarterbacks who are going to go there and really try and prove something at the combine.
Let me tell you what. First off, Spencer Rattler, you mentioned, he has got an absolute howitzer strapped to his shoulder. Like, if he's throwing at the combine, I haven't looked, I'm assuming he is. Watching that thing come out is different. That guy throws the ball like he wants to hurt everyone catching it, but Joe Milton's the one. College football fans, we've been doing the Joe Milton dance for years now, where every offseason we watch him throw an orange 300 yards or do a backflip, and we all lose our freaking minds. Yeah. He's Anthony Richardson level physical talent, but we never really saw it come together. And the NFL, he's going to blow up the combine. I would not be stunned if he's a massive story coming off the combine, because he does a bunch of very freaky stuff there, but it's always proceed with caution on that one. The name that you mentioned, Dad, that I think is most interesting in the Brock Purdy effect era, where people, I wonder, are going to look at some more veteran quarterbacks if you can get it a little bit more value. Michael Penix Jr. is the one that jumps to me. And I saw the other day, I think it might have been Jim Nagy, the former scout, obviously the head of the Reese's Senior Bowl, point out that said if an NFL team's really sure on a guy, like especially a wide receiver, they're all kind of secretly hoping he runs slow at the combine so that other teams kind of go off the scent. And they know, hey, game speed's faster than that. We don't have to worry about that stuff, but other people obsessed with the measurables are going to be turned off by that. I do wonder if there's a good gaggle of NFL teams that were secretly pretty thrilled at how Michael Penix Jr. came back down to earth a little bit in the national championship game versus remember the conversations we were having after they beat Texas in the college football semifinal, where, wow, my God, why isn't Michael Penix Jr. being talked about for the number one quarterback? And how did you all miss this? A bunch of people who had never watched Washington telling people who had watched Washington what they missed not watching Washington. All of that suddenly comes back down to earth, and now you've got a guy that I don't think is going to be a first rounder. Like you've mentioned, there could be 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round. I really don't know. With Michael Penix Jr.'s injury history, 2 shoulder injuries, 2 knee injuries, I don't know if anyone's going to be comfortable enough with those medicals in the first round, but all of a sudden he starts to slip a little bit, and you've got a guy that's running an offense that was so sexy the Seahawks decided to call Ryan Grubb up from Alabama, where he had just been getting settled in, to bring him up there. He's run NFL stuff. He's thrown to NFL receivers. The stuff under pressure is somewhat of a concern, but he's operated offenses that require a lot of you from the neck up. I do think he could be one of those guys where, hey, you get him into the right situation, and a veteran player who might have some physical limitations at this point because of injury all of a sudden could have a chance to pop.
I'm a big fan of his. I'm with you. That's the guy I'm looking at to see what happens with him. I just picked an arbitrary mock draft because everybody does one. And the latest one I looked at has 5 quarterbacks going in the first round. The 3 we keep talking about, and then J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix. Watch for a quarterback. Watch for a team to move up into the back half of the first round and grab a quarterback as well. Because remember, there's a difference. That first round, it's 4 years with an option. So you get that quarterback on the 5th-year option as well. So sometimes that's why you'll see a team jump up into the back of the first round and grab one to get that possible extra year with them.
I'm not saying he'll be in that spot. Other guy to watch, Michael Pratt out of Tulane. Got better every year. They're big kids, 6'3", 220, can move around a little bit. It's an exciting class once you get outside of even the top 4 or top 5 guys as we head into Combine Week here in the NFL.
and Golic. We're talking hoops now, and LeBron James wants his money. He wants a multi-year 9-figure deal, and when you think about it, he probably deserves it. But the question is, where is he going to be? Because rumors are rumbling in the Lakers world in LA, and he says himself, I don't know where I'm going to be. I don't know how much longer I have. So we're all just sort of guessing at this point. And Brian Windhorst went on ESPN's First Take and said, I think I have an idea. He's going the Peter King route. I think I have an idea of what might be good for LeBron James, but he doesn't really know. But it's interesting to see what he had to say.
First off, I think LeBron is angling to sign a multi-year deal in the offseason with the Lakers that will be 9 figures, that will be even bigger than the deal he is on now. Now, whether or not he's able to finish that deal, whether or not the Lakers want to give him a 3-year contract and pay him $60 million when he's 42 years old, that's a different discussion. And I actually believe some of the stuff he's saying right now isn't just about this team, it's about already negotiating that contract. But the Lakers are in position to make a big swing at a trade this summer.
A big swing possibly, but also right now they're favored to miss the playoffs, massive favorites to be in the play-in. So it's just sort of a mess over there. Curious what you guys think on this whole thing. Obviously, he deserves the money. Does he want to be in LA? Does it really depend where Bronny goes? Should Bronny even be in the NBA? No. What's your take on this situation?
The Stugat's very strong and Claudia right there. Just no, but we'll keep that moving there. And Claudia, you're right though. Incredibly complicated ecosystem surrounding LeBron James right now. And so we need to call in a little bit of added muscle here for some help and bring in one of our friends, basketball podcaster herself, Charlotte Wilder, for a Wilder Wednesday on a Tuesday, the co-host of Oddball with Amin El Hassan. And Charlotte, the bat signal for LeBron James talk goes off and you just appear.
Uh-oh.
Oh, buddy, you're muted.
Muted. You're muted.
I did it again, folks.
You did
the
it again.
astronaut is just living on the moon.
Yeah.
The astronaut's living on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who do not know my strategy, when something goes wrong, I pretend I'm an astronaut. But the problem is you have to know something's going wrong to be able to be the astronaut. So apologies to everybody. No, what I was saying is that in sports media, there actually is a bat signal. It's just LeBron's logo, which nobody even knows what it is. So it's just sort of a crown and you're like, oh God, he's at it again. I actually think this makes sense from his perspective, if this is true, if what Windhorst is saying, if he wants this multi-year many dollars deal, because the Lakers make so much money off of having LeBron. Like any team that has LeBron is going to make so much money. It doesn't matter if he's 42. Like he's such a legendary player that I see what he's going for. I think the question becomes for the teams that are in the running to have him, or for the Lakers specifically, it's like, okay, how are you going to win now with this guy? Because he's not young anymore. And if locking him up means that you're going to give up space that you would need for younger players, that, it becomes a whole lot of math, which I'm not very good at, which I rely on people like you guys to tell me if you think that's correct or not. But I get it. I get it, right? Like he wants his money.
Well, I get it from the side of the marketing because, Lakers brand, LeBron brand, I get it both here and internationally of what it could bring. And if you skip, because just the thought of paying, if you do a longer term deal, a 42-year-old LeBron James, $50-60 million, it doesn't seem like the right thing to do from a fiscal standpoint. But from a fiscal standpoint, it does look like the Lakers can make that up because of the brand of both of them. So, Mike, I would actually go the other way and say, is this the right thing to do for the basketball team, though, when going forward? Because every year LeBron's on the team, that's what you're doing. You're just taking that year. What do we do this particular year? Because even if he signs an extension, we don't know if he's playing all those years. So it's like Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay. It's 1 year. Load up for the 1 year. I know they have draft capital over the summer to try and make next year a big year. So then if he signs the extension, then you're trying to do that again the year after. That to me is the trouble that you run into. It's tough. You're between a rock and a hard place. You have one of the greatest of all time who can make you a lot of money and make your brand even bigger. and then there's what's on the basketball court. Can you build that for so that they're not in the play-in, even just to try to get into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think in next summer they're going to be able to have their cake and eat it too with the resources they're going to have, having the 3 first-round picks to be able to use there. But this is also an organization. What's the common refrain that we've heard ever since the trade deadline talking about LeBron James is from Rich, and I heard it was Rich Paul on with Stephen A. Smith on his podcast saying, the Lakers have been great. This is an organization that loves to treat its star players very well. And I understand LeBron James is not the same Lakers tenure as the guy I'm about to mention, but remember that last Kobe Bryant contract? That wasn't a good basketball contract for them. That was a ton of money going out to a player that was sort of a lifetime achievement contract. It was a thank you for your services rendered to this organization while the basketball team was missing the postseason and getting to the point where they hit that doldrum of a competition that lasted really until LeBron James ended up in a Lakers uniform. So, Charlotte, it's not far-fetched to say that this organization is in the business of dealing out contracts that are sort of a payment for what you've done. And LeBron James, whether people want to dismiss it because it was in the bubble or not, hung another banner in Staples Center, and that means something around those parts.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Lakers are the biggest brand in basketball. LeBron is the second biggest brand in basketball. So you would have, from an economic standpoint, I'm not an econ major, but 2 big business things would make me think that that's one even bigger business thing. You're going to have butts in seats no matter whether, LeBron is iced up with icy hot running up and down his body or in his veins or not. Like, I just think I would have a very hard time as the Lakers being like, you know what, we're going to let you head on out, because it feels like that's just not something you do when you have LeBron and when you're maybe the last team that's going to have LeBron. You get a farewell tour. Oh my God. Can you talk? Do you know how many hot dogs they're selling at a LeBron farewell tour? Nobody talks about this enough.
So, Charlotte, you don't believe then for a minute the seesawing LeBron was doing around All-Star Weekend where he said he's not sure if he wants to have a farewell tour or not. LeBron James, the architect of the decision and many other bold basketball moves off the court, somehow would forego the final round. I find that the hardest thing to believe.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, LeBron, producer of Space Jam. Like, you're in movies, you have Spring Hill Entertainment. I'm impressed. I think it's incredible. He's an amazing businessman. Yeah. He's an amazing show. Loved him in Trainwreck. Like, you're telling me this guy who is an actor, who is literally an actor. I'm not saying that as any pejorative, like, I admire him greatly. I wish I had his gravitas in scenes. You're telling me that he is going to pass up a chance to have a whole season of a movie? Like, a farewell tour is just a movie that lasts a whole season where you're the main character and hopefully not a whole lot happens. And that's what people want. And so I just, I don't believe it for a second, Mike. I don't believe it for a second.
And you know what? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, I think a lot of people would want that. But yeah, to hear him say, I'm not sure if I want it, I think a whole lot of people are kind of chuckling behind the scenes saying, yeah, sure, you're not going to want to do that, because I think it would be great for the league, quite honestly.
One of my favorite things about LeBron, yes, I totally agree, Senior. I think it would be, I would love it. I would be bummed if we didn't get a LeBron farewell tour, partly because I'm in the business of content and it would give us a whole lot of it. Secondly, because LeBron, my favorite LeBron is sort of coy LeBron. Is LeBron who's being like, maybe I will, maybe I won't, you're not going to know. And then we're always like, well, I'm pretty sure you will. Like, it's just, like, whatever it is, like, I'm pretty sure you're going to do it. So also, Senior, you and I matched today. We look very nice.
We do. Thanks for the call before the show. I appreciate that very much.
Anytime. Sorry, Mike, we left you out.
Guys, this might just be the ex-ESPN employee just pulsing in my body, but this is erupting from my cells at this point as we talk about a LeBron James multi-year deal and this is Peter King, just the wins talking here. Maybe this is LeBron James understanding Bronny needs a little bit more time to cook at USC before he's going to be ready to go. And so he's got to hold on for a couple extra years here in Southern California, because the other thing we saw pop up yesterday, peak LeBron James. is now a since deleted tweet where he quote tweeted NBA Central, one of those aggregator accounts, tweeted out about how ESPN had removed Bronny James from its 2024 mock draft and now projects him in the 2025 mock draft, saying he's going to need another year at USC. And as Claudia pointed out at the top of this segment, Bronny's production at USC right now has not looked like a guy who's ready to go to the NBA just yet. And so you had LeBron James quote tweet it with this: "Can y'all please just let the kid be a kid and enjoy college basketball? The work and results will ultimately do the talking no matter what he decides to do. If y'all don't know, he doesn't care what the mock draft says. He just works, earned, not given." Now, Charlotte, I will say this is growth because LeBron of old would have included about 8 unnecessary hashtags after this, and probably a strive for greatness thrown in for good measure. So I like to see LeBron's internet literacy continuing to jump to the next level as our coworker here at DraftKings. But I do have to say, this is also the guy that like a year ago was telling us on the shop how much better Bronny was than a lot of guys currently in the NBA. So this is a calls coming from inside the house situation.
Yeah, I also think it's doesn't Bronny have his own social media? There's something so funny to me about in 2024, LeBron being like, here's what he cares about. Here's what my son cares about. And his son is like, I would love to be a fly on the wall in Bronny's life when he when he sees his dad is tweeting again. And I want to know, why did that get taken down? Who made that call? Is that LeBron James's wife, Savannah? Is that Bronny himself being like, Dad, you've got, you know, it's sort of like when your parent like marches into the guidance counselor's office and you're like, oh, I've really got this. But also like sometimes you really don't got this. And so I think it's very interesting. I think that Bronny needs LeBron as well in this sort of funny, I don't know, guys. I can't even like fully, I have no idea what's going on because so much of it is their family. So much of it is their family, and so much of it is what's happening in their house in a way that like I would never speculate about. So I just really, I think what I need is the documentary of this year. Like if they're not filming a documentary that they're also following Bronny, then like they're leaving so much money on the table.
Charlotte, I think the biggest issue and why they took the tweet down was people wanted to see what enjoying college basketball looked like, and that's the tune of 5 points a game, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists, which basically was my stat line in high school. So I think if that's enjoying college basketball, yeah, I think he wanted to take that tweet down for that reason.
Listen,
I do wonder if Bronny actually gets to enjoy any of his time at USC, by the way, too. Like, he's too famous to, even on that campus, be on a college campus. Yeah. And, Dad, I get he's been, somewhat minute restricted. He had the heart condition early in the season. Like, there's reasons that we can suppose, in addition to just, hey, basketball's hard sometimes. And if we're not all LeBron James, it's not going to be as easy as one and doneing our way through this. Mm-hmm. But this is a guy that would definitely benefit from this, but the timeline that his dad has put out there for years has always been that thing looming in the background. And I wouldn't be surprised, quite honestly, if Savannah or someone else there, or Bronny himself, was like, hey man, we need to chill with all this pretty publicly. And we'd seen LeBron James back off that for a while, but it kind of rears its head when you go this loud the other direction.
Listen, I don't think there's any doubt, if you're asking me my opinion, that it was either Bronny or probably Savannah who said, hey, LeBron, chill, okay? Chill out. And even when he kind of backed off of it before, I would think that might have come from the head of the household, which is Savannah, as well as, hey, let our kids be the kids, because LeBron is the one who brought that up. I'll quickly say on the other side, as a dad of kids who were involved in sports in the social media era, I understand tweeting about your kid if you feel something was said about your kid and you want to tweet about it as a parent. But it's always like, do you really want to hit send? Now, this is LeBron, compared to what I'm talking about, LeBron a million times on a brighter stage. Do you really want to hit send here? And so obviously when you take something down, somebody got to you, or because rarely in this day and age, and Charlotte, you can correct me if I'm wrong, does the person that actually hits send actually say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have done that, I'm going to take it down, because everybody is so invested in their tweet that it normally takes somebody else to kind of knock on their forehead and say, you really want that up there?
So, Senior, this is one of those things where what I'm about to say really probably does not apply to many people. I actually delete most of my tweets because what happens is I put one up and then I reread it. And I'm like, that's pretty embarrassing. Like, no matter what it is, it could be opinion about sports. It could be a joke. It could be a bad pun. And it could be something that I tweet. And I'm like, I know this is embarrassing when I'm tweeting it, but then I read it back. And then I imagine other people, like people I know in my private life reading it. And then I get so embarrassed and I turn bright red that I just delete it. So there is a world in which LeBron James could have embarrassed himself to the point where he deleted it. But I think you're right. I think that professional athletes generally have a higher, I think they're less embarrassment prone, maybe. Do you think that's accurate, guys?
Well, they think they're right. They think what they put up is something good.
Of them, yeah.
Yeah.
I need more yes men in my life.
I'm with you about the deleting because normally when I put out a tweet on my own, usually I just quote tweet. But if I put out a tweet of my own, like a minute later, I get text from my wife or Jake or Mike or Sydney. Dad, you spelled 10 words wrong in there. Take that down. So I have to take it down because of my own stupidity, not because of the content of it.
Well, the other day I was going to tweet something and I showed it to my husband and I was like, is this embarrassing? And he was like, no. And so I tweeted it and then I reread it and I was like, no, he's wrong. It is embarrassing. But he is a good barometer. Like sometimes I'll show him stuff and he'll be like, maybe you don't hit send. So I think LeBron just needs an editor up front, maybe. But I hope he doesn't get one because I prefer it when LeBron is just like on a hot streak on the platform formerly known as Twitter.
There are a few very important points in here. One, the Venn diagram of people whose parents and family members are online tweeting in a way that affects their life at times and embarrassing tweets. My brother and sisters in Christ, I am in the center of that one in ways that have been very interesting in the past. And Charlotte, your point about having people in your life that are there to vet your tweets, I encourage everybody, if you exist on the internet, you got to have a group chat or you got to have a person that you run it all by. You got to have somebody there to stress test your takes before you send them out into the world, because there are group chat takes and there are Twitter takes. And the gap between those two things, buddy, that is the Grand freaking Canyon at certain times. So I would encourage everyone, have someone in your life who cares about you enough, who knows you enough to be able to look you in your eye. It can be a loved one. It can be a spouse like you have there. It can be a friend. Shout out to a good buddy, friend of the show, Mina Kimes, holding it down right there. A great arbiter of takes before they're launched into the timeline. Like, man, you got to have somebody on the payroll for that. Dad, you just happen to have an entire family. And it's not because your takes are bad. It's just because you're bad at spelling and syntax and typing and seeing things. The font on your phone is gigantic, so I don't know how that's possible still, but that's your cross to bear, not mine.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Well, you guys would have to kind of talk to your mother a few times about some tweets back in the college days.
Mom was very passionate during football season there. Yeah.
Except I don't think anything Chris could tweet would embarrass me. She's sort of my gold standard. Like if I see the head of the Golic household tweeting something, I'm usually just like, I'm on board. But you know,
Charlotte, she likes you a lot. She would defend you to the end on Twitter, and she doesn't care. She will throw stuff out. She will bite people's heads off. She does not care.
Yeah, we should all be so lucky.
All of my mom's tweets are great, and I will never say anything otherwise.
Smart man. A smart man. I do think though that
out here. So go ahead.
The canyon that you were talking about, Mike, the Grand Canyon between group chats and tweets, I would say that that's called keeping your job or not valley. So it's, an important place to try not to hang out.
Charlotte, it is 100% true. There are two different camps in Twitter, and the one camp you mentioned has people who either have bosses that can see their tweets or have family members that can see their tweets. And the rest of us get to act that way, while y'all over out on that other side of Twitter get to do whatever you do. And it's a terrifying, lawless land where a lot of the problems are going on right now. And so I'm going to stay the hell away from that. Coming up next, though, I'm going to run screaming into the fray on another issue. We're still talking about court storming. We'll hear from the other side of the Duke-Wake Forest court storming next on GoJo and Golic.
GoJo and Golic, the court storming controversy continues as head coaches now, which makes sense, are complaining about it, but they're calling for a stop to it. They just want an end. Although I get it, recency bias, it makes sense. Kyle Filipowski, the star for Duke, got hurt bumping into a Wake Forest player. Caitlin Clark, the face of college basketball, got hurt recently. But is that like too much to say they need to just end it altogether? Are they able to even do that? Some teams have ropes out there and people just jump over the rope. So, I don't even know if this is something you can stop, but we're having head coaches like Bill Self for Kansas saying, I want to be done with it, which I guess, guys, makes sense, but is that even something that they could do successfully?
No one should be on the court until the opposing players, coaches, staff have been given the opportunity to leave the court and exit the bench area.
That was Steve Forbes, the head coach of Wake Forest, who offered up an interesting idea because Charlotte, we're trying to figure out solutions to this process, and I'm not sure what's realistic and what's not. Jay Billis was getting up on ESPN yesterday saying you could detain everyone who's on the court and give them all citations, which that seems like it'd be a real you can't arrest all of us situation that would end poorly for a lot of people involved, given how reckless people have become, which I think is a part of this conversation. But Steve Forbes, who was the coach on the other side of the court, whose home crowd was storming after a win that he helped his team secure, was saying, hey, we need to take time and hold everyone until the opposing team can exit the court, try and create a buffer, which I saw Sean Farnham at ESPN offer up yesterday. Do you think that's realistic, Charlotte? Is there anything that could or should be done in this case, like Claudia mentioned?
I mean, it sort of feels like it's a situation of if you can get all the fans on board, because I think, the first thing it actually made me think of was when Tennessee beat Alabama was that 2022 or 2021? I can't remember. And they took the goalpost and they carried it to the river, and they threw it in the river. And it was so celebrated because, first of all, it was pretty metal. But also it was like, we don't care what the rules are. We'll accept the fine, blah, blah, blah. And I think that the more you try to impose rules, especially on college fans, you tend to be met with, because first of all, college kids, if you told me not to do something in college, I would be like, cool, I'm going to go do that thing. And I think that is what you're dealing with a lot of 18 to 22-year-olds. But I also think that it is such a rush of energy at the end of a game like that, that it's crowd mentality. It's like you have to deprogram the human body. And I don't think Stuart Carming is good necessarily either. For a long time, I've been watching this being like, this feels like it's like, first of all, it scares me half to death. I do not want to be involved. That's sort of my nightmare. But I think it's a natural reaction at this point, and I don't know how you stop it. Do you know how you stop it? Is there a way to stop it?
So I will say from my angle, as someone who's been a part of both a field that was stormed when a good things happen, and also storming the court at a basketball game at Notre Dame where I was a fan, I get the fun of it, right? As a player on a football field, you got a lot more room. There's people out there you're taking pictures with. You see your buddy from class that shows up there with his girlfriend, and you guys get to take a selfie and recollect on it years later. I stormed the court after Notre Dame. I forget who they beat when I was there, the men's basketball team, but I saw people making out there. It was like when soldiers would come home and they'd be doing the deep dramatic dip kiss. So that was cool too to see. But Dan, on the other side, I do recognize what Charlotte's talking about here is that there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think now more than ever we've seen there are a lot more people who are willing to push the boundaries on what should be considered normal or decent in these settings. And you always worry about the safety of these athletes involved for the home or the away team.
So first, we know the SEC fines schools, and there are 11 conferences that have recently had said that you'd be subject to fines under certain circumstances. The ACC does not issue fines. And the reason I mention fines, because Charlotte mentioned this, you know who doesn't care if your school's getting fined? The 18 to 22-year-old that's running on the court. They don't care. Hey, our school's going to get fined. So what? Not coming out of my pocket. Don't care. And then it's a mob mentality to get on the court. So you either stop it altogether. I kind of like watching it. I think it's a cool thing, but it's not worth the safety of one player on the court. So if that's going to be the issue, then you're going to have to stop it. Now, remember John Shire had mentioned there was a time when there was a 10-second wait at the end of a game. If you can pull that off, I don't know how you do it, but if you can pull that off, that would be the best way. That's getting the other team off the court. You have time to pull them off the court because you saw under these circumstances like Caitlin Clark, there was a security person kind of by her, but not quick enough. So if you wait a little bit, again, 10 seconds, I think you could get away with it. But I don't know how you do that. There are ropes up, and all it takes is a couple of students to, not care or have a little too much drink in them to even care at all or understand, I got to wait 10 seconds. And as soon as they run on the court, it starts the mob mentality of everybody. Then you have to kind of hit the students with something to deter them if that's what you want to do. But that's, and I don't want to go down that road. That's not something that I want to do. But I do think if you can find a way to delay it, I still not sure I recall what Shire or when that was that you can delay something like that, because usually it's an immediate let's party type situation. But to me, to keep it, that would be the best way, other than having security run out on the court and quickly protect the other team, the home team players, and get them off the court, or however you're going to do it. But I'd like to find a way to keep it.
So Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark said on Outside the Lines Monday that him and other commissioners are talking about addressing this in the future. Greg Byrne, the Alabama athletic director, went as far as to say that he thinks that teams should have to forfeit in scenarios like this, which is insane and is never going to happen and shouldn't happen in any scenario like that. But Dad, what you're talking about here, I've always said this for years. I'll liken everything to offensive line play. When you see teams pick up a blitz or pick up a stunt or do anything like that, half of it is your ability. The other half is preparation. I do think home teams being prepared for scenarios where hey, Duke's coming to town. Wake Forest doesn't beat them a lot. This is a geographic rivalry. You got to have added security ready to go with a plan in place of what to do when this is going to happen, that they're going to be able to execute in that scenario. I think that's part number one. The other part is this. You're talking about deterrence to get students not to rush the court. Jay Billis is talking about deterrence. I'm talking about a reward right here. I got the solution because I know what college kids like, and I know what crowds in general at sporting events like. Free stuff, baby. So walk with me on this. What local brand will step up to the plate and do what we see for free throws all the time? Hey, so-and-so on the opposing team misses 2 free throws. Everybody gets 2 free chicken sandwiches at Chick-fil-A or whatever the place is around campus right there. You get the opposing team successfully off the court before you storm that thing. Everybody in the crowd that night is getting free Taco Bell or whatever you want on the other side of this right here. You got to speak the love language of drunk college people. And the love language of drunk college people is free food. What will get students to self-police the other? The prospect of free drunk food on the backside of this celebration where you're going to go lift a goalpost into the river or something like this. This is the platform that I will run for public office on here. This is how we fix the court storming controversy.
That's the smartest thing I've ever heard. That's the smartest thing I've ever heard.
I was just about to say that.
Right?
Smartest thing he's ever said.
Yeah. You've said a lot of smart things, GoJo, but I love because I'm putting myself back in the mentality of being in college, and I'm like, what could have made me do something? If you said there's free pizza in the student center, I would have been like, say no more. I am off the court. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. But I also like that you're saying get the other team off, because you're not saying don't do it all together. You're saying you're putting in realistic parameters with a realistic reward. And Raising Cane's was raised for this.
Oh, yes.
Are you kidding me?
Absolutely.
A boatload of cane sauce on the other side. You're right.
Yeah. Good idea.
Listen, guys, I was a drunk college kid for a long time. And while it's been a long time since those days, I still feel like you and I, young people, we're not that different. Like Charlotte said, a free t-shirt, a little bit of free donuts or chicken in the student center, that's always been a currency that plays on college campuses, and I think we can save court storming this way. So anybody, feel free to call me, Greg Byrne, Brett Yormark, all you guys. I'm willing to sit in on the meetings and help you.
off the market after a prolonged free agent period. The Cubs have snatched him up. They gave him his money, but not as much as he really wanted. But that's no surprise because no teams, unless you're the LA Dodgers or the Braves, seem to want to dish out that money, and players don't really have an option. So that's the deal that Cody Bellinger got, and his agent is not happy, and he's sort of saying the quiet part out loud. He told USA Today that teams are too worried about cutting payroll, more important to them than paying for good free agents. Clubs have plenty of money to spend, but they're not spending in a manner that is customary to competitiveness. It's not that they don't have the ability to pay, but their choice to regress on their payrolls. Red Sox, because still available, two-time Cy Young winner Blake Snell. You have Jordan Montgomery, four-time Gold Glove winner, and Matt Chapman. Yet, a lot of these teams with a lot of money to spend just don't want to do it, guys.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch this in Major League Baseball, and it feels weird to say in an offseason, right, where we saw, Juan Soto traded to the Yankees and wind up over there. We saw everything that went on with Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers. There's been plenty of big-time movement of stars that's creating an exciting buzz this offseason, but Charlotte, especially in the Northeast, where you guys are, and obviously Claudia referenced the Red Sox there. I know you're Boston sports, everything. A lot of big-time franchises have been unwilling to spend, and for a lot of them on that side, they've pointed back to local TV deals. It's the unsexiest headline in the world, but when you've got the local TV contracts, which make up a bigger source of Major League Baseball's income than in any other professional sports league in America, that's the thing they're falling back on, is we're not really sure what the future looks like for regional television deals, and so we're going to hold back a little bit on these finances, but the end result, I'd have to imagine, is maddening for fans, Charlotte, especially in Boston, who are used to fielding these competitive teams full of stars and are now looking at a franchise that's almost completely reverse course on that.
Yeah, well, that's sort of been the promise of being a Boston fan, is that, we are going to spend money to get you the players that you need to feel happy as a fan. And it's so interesting. I was reading about all of this last night as I was watching the 4th episode of the Patriots Dynasty on Apple TV Plus, which, oh my God. Anyway, that's a whole different thing. But, I was reading about the local TV deals and how that's why a lot of teams aren't paying people. And to be honest, I remember thinking this back in 2018 or 2019 as baseball as a sport. People, it hasn't been the sexiest sport. It hasn't been the most popular sport. And these massive contracts keep getting signed. And I was sort of I feel like there's going to be a reckoning at some point. And I don't necessarily think that we are getting there, but I think that the people in charge of the money are getting there. And I think it's, when you have Rafael Devers saying, "You are not getting us the help we need," when you have Dustin Pedroia, who is not playing baseball for the Red Sox anymore, but is beloved in Boston and New England, saying, you guys know you can do something, right? It's a little insane. And I think anybody who's worked in sports media especially is used to the feeling being hey, we could use a little help here. But you don't usually say it out loud. So for them to be saying it out loud, as Claudia said, that the quiet part out loud, which Scott Boras said, but also we're seeing players say that. It's just wildly frustrating because sure, you can be worried about a TV contract, but you should really be worried about general revenue if you don't have a competitive team, if you don't have something fans want to go see. It just seems extremely backwards to me at this point, and it's deeply frustrating.
You look at the competitive balance tax, the luxury tax in baseball. It's at, I think, $237 million for this year. And at this point, I think there's 4 teams that are over it. The Phillies, the Astros, the Mets, and the Yankees up there are $290 million. You kind of see this in basketball. Golden State did that. They were over, and they paid, on top of, with the luxury tax, over $300 million 2 years ago, $400 million this year. And for a team that certainly has been one of the great teams over a number of years, but now they're talking about, we may need to back off a little bit, not spend as much money. And you wonder if that's where baseball is, because is there a bigger sport with haves or have-nots? If you look at payrolls going into this year, the Yankees up top at $290 and the A's at the bottom at $45 million. If you want to throw them out because God knows about them, go to the Pirates, who are 29th. They're at $77 million. So the disparity is absolutely amazing. And every now and then you see that lower payroll team win, and it gives every owner a chance to say, see, you can do it. You can do that. We don't have to spend all this money. We can still win. Go out and do what they did, which is certainly hard to do. You can never blame the people who own the teams if they want to make a buck. I've always said that about the Eagles. When Norman Brayman was our owner, he didn't care that much about the team. He wasn't even around. It was more about making money. And do owners want to make money? Do owners want to put out championship teams? But it seems like teams are pulling back a bit.
I will disagree with you on one thing. Can absolutely blame owners if they just want to make a buck and don't field a competitive team. Everyone else in the process can be criticized for their role in it, and we are right to look at owners. I'm always amazed at the amount of fans that fall back, especially, football's salary cap sport, so it's a little bit different, but who opt on that side of things. In a league that is uncapped, where like the NBA, you've got thresholds to meet and tax you can pay above a certain point. Like, man, I'd be looking at these owners going, most of you got money with a B. I don't care if you have to light a little bit of it extra on fire. Go and spend to make me happy if you're going to own the thing that I love. I think there's allowed to be that friction between franchise and ownership. Hell, we see it drive a ton overseas. That's why American owners that try and go over to the Premier League always come running back with their tail tucked between their leg half the time. Because if you do a bunch of stuff that pisses off the locals, they're going to let you hear about it. And so I do think it's fine and actually healthy to look at ownership in particular, the people with the most money in all this, and say, yes, screw your bottom line. We need a competitive team out here, or I'm not going to support in the ways that make you money.
Well, then that's the line they have to decide which is theirs, because what normally happens, you tick off a fan and there's 5 fans that take his spot. So again, I will not blame owners if they want to make a buck. It's their team. You don't have to like it. You can absolutely hate it.
I think you're saying it's their right, but we can absolutely blame them. Like, they're not blameless in this, but you're saying it's their right to operate the business how they want.
Yes.
But none of us have to like it.
Yes. No. I agree with that. You don't have to like it, and your way of not liking it is not showing up. And if it hits the line where that's happening too much, where you need to get fans back, then it's up to the owner to decide what he wants to do to try and bring that back up. So, it's their right to do, but I agree. You don't have to like it, and fans can blast them, boycott them, do whatever they want, but it's their money and their team.
I think, though, that a lot of these owners, you look at the Mets, you look at Steve Cohen, who spent so much money and nothing happened. You look at the Red Sox, right? John Henry, they let Mookie Betts go, and I'm never going to forgive them for that. Like that, I can't, I get heated. Like, I'm probably turning red right now because I'm like, how could you do that? Because the one thing you have money for is to get good players who can win you championships, because championships make you more money. So, like, I'm not going to blame owners if they want to make money, but I will blame them if they think you can make money by not paying the people you need to win the thing, to make the fans happy, to make the money. It's just like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I'm like, give me a team.
There we go. I think we found the solution to all this is give Charlotte Wilder a team. And I think the funniest thing about all this conversations is with Cody Bellinger as the jumping off point, who's really a representative of the offseason, you can make an argument his situation a little bit more specific, right? The market for him based off the 2 seasons prior, where he's comeback player of the year this last year, but in the 2 seasons before that, performance had dipped massively. You look at some of the underlying indicators like exit velocity and some of the things that people were checking on. It hints that this might have been a little bit of an outlier, and people want to wait and see on this. He's got opt-outs in the first 2 years of the contract, so he's going to have an opportunity to go back to the table. And I think overall, because we turn everything in national media into the good for the sport conversation, like, baseball, I think, is largely going to be fine from that perspective. It made huge leaps last year in some of the metrics based on the pitch clock and what that had done. Obviously, you've got what I think every sport covets this season in a big bad. You've got the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are going to have the target on their back for the entire year because of the offseason moves they made. You heard it from Mookie Betts himself, who said, everyone we play, this is going to be their World Series. They have courted the smoke, and I'd imagine they're going to get it this season. And so having those things there, having some of the stars in key places, we mentioned Soto in New York, there's going to be plenty of a draw still here. But Major League Baseball has joined a bunch of other sports, the NFL included, in the current economic status, pricing out a lot of the middle class, pricing out a lot of quality players in favor of either very young and cheap or incredible star power. All right, time to finish off this the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live every Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Also, make sure you check out Oddball, Charlotte Wilder, Amin El Hassan, every day but Monday on the DraftKings Network, talking hoops for you guys and doing a great job as always. If you miss any of the show today, including our friend Charlotte Wilder, our new friend Claudia Bellafato, you can check all that out wherever you get your podcasts, as well as available right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third. 4 wide, always love for this. We'll see how this is going to go because we got controversy right out of the gate here on this, that, and the third. Wendy's, it was announced, is going to explore surge pricing for its menu. They're going to test this model in a few select locations beginning in 2025. Essentially, they're responding to, in a lot of fast food chains, the increase in minimum wage in certain areas across the country by trying to fix a pricing menu that responds to the traffic outside of the restaurant. Basically, if there are more people coming in any given time, the prices on the menu are going to jump. If you get there at off-peak hours, you're going to get things at a lesser price here. Charlotte, this does not feel like the square deal that I was promised by the folk at Wendy's when they gave me their square burgers and their wonderful Frosties. And while I'm going to be able to exploit the market inefficiency with some of these off-peak hours because I work weird hours, I'm worried about everybody else who's now all of a sudden going to have their Frosties held hostage by these price hikes.
This is absolutely a travesty. This is not what, good old fashioned values or hamburgers are made of. It also feels a little like big tech. It feels like fast food trying to be like, we're a tech company. And it's like you literally make cheeseburgers. Like, all I want from you is a cheeseburger. I don't want anything with surge or flex involved in it. So count me out. Sorry, Wendy's.
So can I let me ask the question then. So, Mike, you said other fast food joints like McDonald's, because their minimum wage has gone up, is raising their prices. So what if their prices are as high as Wendy's prices, even in Wendy's surge time, but Wendy's prices are lower than McDonald's in the off-peak hours? Wouldn't that be a good thing? If you're paying about the same as other places in the surge hours and you're paying less in the off-peak hours, wouldn't that work out okay? Now, I don't know if the surge hours are going to be more expensive than the other fast food places. That's going to have to be the key. But we hear the other fast food places are all jacking their prices anyway.
We shouldn't need a spreadsheet for fast food, people. This is just greedy, straight up. Like, let's just keep the chicken nuggets at whatever they are and the Frosties. It's fast food. That's what it's supposed to be. If I want to drop bills, I go to a steakhouse. This is straight up greedy, and it's wrong.
We don't need a spreadsheet for fast food is the quote of the day here from Claudia on day one, coming storming out the gates hot. I completely agree. It's taking advantage of one of our most vulnerable population points, which is drunk people trying to eat late night who aren't going to know any better and who are just going to spend recklessly here. We need to protect them. We've already done that job today trying to help solve court storming. We're going to do it again here with Wendy's. Shame on you, Wendy's. I love you and I've supported you over the years. I've said that you're as good of a burger as In-N-Out out here in Los Angeles. You know how dangerous it is for me to say that, and now this is how I'm repaid on the other side. Ugh, getting hot and bothered. Let's move on to that so I stop sweating here. Claudia, we've got people as upset as I am at Wendy's at apparently Kim Kardashian because her kid got to do something cool.
Yeah, I mean, people love to hate on the Kardashians, which I do sort of understand. But this one's wrong, I think, in my eyes, because her 8-year-old son got to walk Messi out. But as you guys know, this is what they do in MLS and across the world with soccer as young kids walk out the players. They're sort of mascot for the game. But I get it. It's Kim K's son, so everybody's mad, saying, that's not fair. My son plays too. But yeah, this happened on Sunday when Inter Miami faced LA Galaxy. What do you guys think about this? Should we be hating on Kim K, or should we just let her be?
Gonna hate on the kid? I mean, come on, man. I mean, we've seen rich parents getting their kids into college recently. That's been the major headline. And you want to worry because one soccer match, the kid gets to go and hang out with Leo Messi? Like, this is how fame works. I don't know why we're acting surprised by it in this venue, especially when it comes to what Messi has brought to Inter Miami. This is the effect. This is the halo that's followed this dude. So, Charlotte, I think this is a bit ridiculous. But like Claudia mentioned, I understand that there are a lot of people with very strong feelings about the Kardashians, and so this is probably not about Saint.
Well, I think it's also anytime there's someone who is so unbelievably rich being like, look at my cute little kid, look what they got to do, which is generally something that cute kids who aren't billionaires get to do is like a fun thing because they love soccer. That I sort of get. I can imagine that the Venn diagram of American soccer fans and people who like the Kardashians, probably I could see that being two separate circles. But, again, I really also don't care, to be perfectly frank with you, like good for everybody. And I feel like there are bigger examples of like rich people doing bad things than Kim K's son walking Messi out onto the pitch.
I saw comments. People are trying to compare her to Taylor Swift, like saying she's trying to bring an impact to MLS. And I saw that and I just thought of Junior and I was like, no.
Yeah, let's stop that one right there. Listen,
now that being said, everything the Kardashians touch does turn to money, so I won't count that out for them. But Dad, certainly different ballparks here.
Yeah. Charlotte, I'm with you. I don't care. I mean, to think some rich person got to have their kid do something, I mean, give me a break. And I've really come full circle on the Kardashians. A lot of people are like, oh, I can't stand them. You know what? Kudos to them. They got company after company to throw money at them for doing their thing. So, you know what? Kudos to them. Because now the unfortunate thing is we have a whole, bunch of generation of people that are trying to do the same thing to never really work and have companies throw a bunch of money at them and then build something off of that. So, I can't blame the Kardashians for companies giving them a lot of money.
To be clear, I am trying to figure out how to do that. So if anyone knows how to get me TikTok famous so I don't have to show up to work anymore, please let me know and we'll try and figure that out. As we march towards the third, speaking of people with a lot of money making questionable decisions, Claudia, we have got someone out in my neck of the woods here in California trying to risk it all for their very expensive home.
And Mike, just run a Skims campaign. Just order some of those tight Skims that Kim K wears and post it on Twitter. I'm sure it'll blow up.
You would look amazing.
So speaking of rich people doing insane things, the owner of a $16 million California mansion is on literally the verge of falling into the ocean. There is videos, there is pictures. This house, as you can see, is ready to rumble. It is ready to go. Yet this 82-year-old man named Lewis is like, no, it's fine. My house is fine. The city said it's fine. Everything's fine. And I don't know, guys, from the look of it, the way that Charlotte's looking at this video, I think you agree with me, Charlotte.
Yeah, Claudia, I'm like, okay, this to me is like rich person hubris. This is like, okay, your house is literally teetering on the edge of an eroding cliff. And he's like, but I'm rich, so it's fine. Like, I'll just throw money at the problem. It's like, yeah, if you want to throw stacks of cash so high that they become support pylons for your house, like, go for it. But otherwise, I don't know what money is doing for you here. Although shout out to Lewis for being very stubborn and going down with the ship. Captain always goes down with the ship.
He's a G. He's a G.
Dad, as the richest person here, would you operate like Lewis?
I'd be out of there. There are actually 3 homes affected by the recent rain there, but they said they don't appear to be in imminent danger. I don't need to find out if I'm rich like this. Now, I'm not rich like this guy. I wish I was, but I'm not. There are, you know what? I would be out somewhere else in a very nice rental somewhere. There are very nice ones that wouldn't affect this guy's pocketbook. But he's like it's like when that hurricane's hitting somewhere and that family says, we're not leaving. We're boarding up stuff and we're staying. Why? I mean, why? What are you proving to anybody by doing that?
One other thing I could say, I'm not putting him in the grave, but he's 82 years old. He's closer to the end than he is the beginning.
Oh my, come on.
Cool ass way to die. Really? Fall off a giant cliff in your huge mansion.
I'm just saying, he probably has a jetpack, like ready to boost out of there once it falls.
He's probably got another body on ice in there that he's going to upload his consciousness into. I've seen Cloud Atlas and all those movies, and I know how the rich operate here. If you think this has all gone too far, we agree too. Download, subscribe, rate, review us, and leave us a 5-star rating anyway. Check us out live Monday through Friday. Check out Oddball with Charlotte Wilder and Amin El Hassan. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.